What's up and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where each week I, Treavor Bettis, talk to interesting people about idle champions and Dungeons and Dragons. And joining me this week is Sarah Baylus, the writer of Karlach. Hello!
Hello, so nice to be here.
I thank you very much for being here. We are in completely different time zones, and so
Yep.
I'm so happy we were able to get this together in order to record. And yes, chat, we are recording an episode, so you're going to have to be watching for the chat for the giveaway. I'm not going to be saying anything. But Sarah, if folks don't know who are you for those fine folks who may not know?
Hello, I'm Sarah. I'm a writer at Larian Studios for the last long while now, 10 years, I think.
Oh, wow.
Uh, yeah, I'm old.
That's not what I meant.
And most recently have worked on Baldur's Gate 3 and yeah, did a lot of work on Karlach. I think that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, because Karlach is, I believe, right as the time of this showing is in the game, so you can go get Karlach right now, and have some fun with more Baldur's Gate 3 characters. I gotta ask real quick. So you've worked there for 10 years. Did you work on Divinity and all that too?
Yes, I worked on Original Sin 1 and Original Sin 2.
Oh, see, now I know we're here to talk about Karlach, but I played both those games and I want to talk about that now too. But
Part 2.
part two, yeah, we'll do a part two. That's for another show. But Sarah, I want to start things off the way that I normally do on this show, which is the icebreaker question of how'd you get into D&D?
Ooh, I got into D&D actually during production of DOS 2. So probably in like 2015 or something like that.
Okay.
And it was just something my colleagues were doing a tabletop RPG and they asked me to join and I had never done it before. And the first session, I just didn't know what to expect. I hadn't like been watching videos about it. I really just knew from like pop culture what it was. And it took a few sessions for me to get like fully like, I'm gonna do my half-orc voice, you know?
Do it, yeah.
Like, here I am, like, yeah, let's go do this. So it took a little bit for me to like roll into it, but I never looked back.
That's fantastic. So was this like the other writers at the company, or was this other people in other departments?
Yeah, I think that first game I was in was very mixed. I think there was scripters and audio designers and all sorts of people at the table.
That's fantastic. I haven't gotten to do like we've done a few stream games of like folks that work here at CNE for doing D&D stuff, but I haven't gotten to just have like like off camera D&D game with my coworkers. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, it's great. Like there's a few games running, I think, at the studio in various places. And yeah, I'm not in one at the moment, but it's always on the go. Everyone is
Mm.
mad into it. Yeah.
I have to assume that there were quite a few games going while Baldur's Gate 3 was getting made. Like it's like you got to get into
Yeah.
how these mechanics work.
Yeah, like you finish work for the day and then off in one of the meeting rooms, like no matter which studio you're in, you hear it kind of like kicking off, you know, you hear some
The dice
narration and then
rolling.
yeah, exactly. There's always going on after work.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I mean I feel like that was everyone's hope for this was that it's like you're making a D&D game, you're enjoying D&D as it is. And so I assumed that there would be a bunch of games going there. That's fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, speaking of all of that and writing for that, who is why don't you tell the chat in case they somehow don't know who is Karlach?
Karlach is so dreamy. She's
Yes.
she's a very tall tiefling barbarian woman who has spent the last 10 years fighting in the Blood War in Avernus. She was sent there by a very mean man.
Mm.
But she boarded the Nautiloid at the start of the game in Baldur's Gate 3, this mysterious ship, and hops on board and gets a tadpole put in her eye and is quickly on a way, the path to adventure and a path to returning from where she came from.
Mm. I do want to say here, real quick, chat. There may be spoilers that occasionally pop up in here. We've talked beforehand. We're going to give a spoiler warning to let you know if we are about to say something. And I will say the last question I have at the end of the show is very spoilery, but I will give you a heads up about that as well. But yeah, so Karlach, the tiefling barbarian. How did this character come to be?
Well, Karlach is the brainchild of Mr. Adam Smith, who's the lead writer at Larian. And I think he had Karlach cooking for a while. And the story had changed over the years. Like everything we do iterates
Hmm.
over the years. And then as time went on, I started working on her, and she kind of came together. She's a product of a very collaborative environment. I think everything we do is extremely collaborative. So, I was responsible for the dialogue. Ellen Grant was responsible for the cinematics, for most of them anyway. Like, has so much uh, personality and joy put into the way she looked. And Borja Garcia is the scripter who actually like made her function in the game. So like you can write things on paper, but it doesn't do anything until it actually works.
Yeah.
And put a lot of creativity and awesomeness into her there, and countless other people. I could like pretty much run through the roster of Larian naming names and how they contributed to the character in some way. But that's a brief overview.
That's fantastic. So the lead writer comes up with this character like I I did say this beforehand, but like I'm the writer for Idle Champions, and so like I'm very fascinated about how this process works with such a bigger team and all of these characters that had so much time and love put into them. Like what is the process like after the lead writer's like, okay, here's the character, I'm passing it on to you. What goes on from there?
I think in this case there was like a few kind of revs of the engine. So she went through narrative design with Bo Welch, and by the time she came to me, it was like, okay, like let's put this character in the game. Like we have these beats that she's going to hit, and then it was a long process, I think, of like how is she going to sound? What's her personality going to be like? And a lot of iteration. So I think early on she was a bit more straightforwardly like badass,
Yeah.
to use the kind of most obvious word. And I tried writing her like that for a while, and she was just kind of stepping on Lae'zel's toes a little bit. Like I would write a scene that Lae'zel had a
Mm.
similar scene, and then I would read Lae'zel's scene and be like, it's not giving enough contrast, I guess, or it's a little bit too similar. So yeah, in the process of iterating that, she kind of you find the voice eventually,
Yeah.
like I think early on when I was working on it, people would ask me like, "How's it going with Karlach?" And I'd say like, "We'll find out." I don't know.
Well, I feel like that is the attitude of a lot of writers. It's like, how's the project going? Yeah, we'll find out.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you never know. You never know until it gets into the hands of players.
Yeah,
You can hope it's going to land a certain way, but especially Karlach wasn't in early access, so you
yeah.
didn't have that kind of initial vibe of how it was going to land. So it was a real kind of like, I hope people will pick her. You never
I
know.
I mean, I will say from my perspective, like Karlach was such a pleasant surprise because I played the beta in 2020 when it was first launched, and when I got to the end of where that was, and they're like, okay, well, every time we do an update, you're gonna start over, and we're just gonna keep it in Act 1. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm glad I supported this, but I don't want to keep playing it over. I'm afraid I'm gonna get burnt out on it or anything. And
Mm.
so I felt like I knew a lot of the stuff that was in there. And then to find out there was a whole other character I hadn't interacted with. And she's just this freaking badass that is so freaking cool to hang out with. She made that first act even better than it was the first time I played it. I loved it.
Oh, that's lovely to hear.
So you did dialogue. So when because you were saying like cinematics and narrative and stuff like that. So what exactly could you point to that you worked on in the game?
Um, yeah, any words that Karlach speaks,
Okay.
um, yeah,
Oh, so
yeah.
when you were saying cinematics, you mean like writing out what they're doing, but you're going in and writing the dialogue for her.
Yes, so the cinematic artist is actually controlling the cameras and the shots and the kind of visuals of a
Okay.
cinematic dialogue. Yeah. So that would be a collaboration with the cinematic artist and a writer. For Karlach, that would have been me, I think, for most of them or all of them. Um, yeah, so that's a very collaborative process. And then, yeah, the main job of myself would be like actually writing the things that she says.
Okay. So I guess when my head when you said like cinematic one, like there was a person that in the like the big cinematic ones where you're not choosing dialogue and stuff, like they're writing that part, but
Mm,
I get what you mean now. Okay.
yeah.
So the you were talking about the her being kind of the standard badass one and stepping on Lae'zel's toes, like what what kind of brought in that attitude that we know now? Like, was it just trial and error, or was there like some inspiration that hit you for it?
Yeah, I think the the ways that evolved for her that veered away from the kind of pure barbarian warrior type. I guess, you know, it's kind of that dorkiness, that
Yeah.
vulnerability she has, the naivety, that she's a bit, because she's been in the hells for such a long time, she's a bit young emotionally
Hmm.
because she's been torn away from friends and family and a social group. So I think that just evolved organically the more I kind of thought about her situation and the more I kind of tried out different things with her dialogue and what kind of felt right. And like I'm sure you know yourself as a writer, like sometimes you're kind of grinding away at something and then it goes into a groove and it suddenly feels easy and it's
Oh
natural.
God, one of the
Yeah.
best feelings.
Yeah. So I think it was that. It was working away at things until something started to feel like really natural and really effortless. And that
Hmm.
was the final version for her.
When you can look at it and go, that's the character's voice. Like that is what's differentiating her from Lae'zel or even Gale or anything like that. This is the style of it. I that's yeah, that's
Yeah.
always a great feeling.
Exactly. Actually, this kind of reminds me of like the first gig I ever did for Larian before I worked there full time was just proofreading dialogue from Divinity Dragon Commander,
Mhm.
which was this game that had a lot of dialogue and a lot of characters in it. And I was only proofreading them, and it was in a big Excel spreadsheet, and all I could see was the actual lines that were being said. And I thought it was so brilliant. This was written by Jan van Dosselaar, who's is still at Larian, and I could just by reading a line tell which of this cast of like 20 characters was talking with no other context. And I thought that was such an indication of like a strong voice and
Yeah.
a strong perspective. And I always admired that.
Yeah, that is always the that's the best. Like I I'm for Idle Champions. I'm essentially writing all of these other people's characters,
Mm.
and I lurk in the Discord that we have for Idle Champions, and sometimes one time I saw someone like show a line of dialogue from Minsk, and they were just like, "This sounds perfectly like Minsk." I'm like, "That's the best compliment I could have ever gotten."
Yeah. Yeah. Like retaining that character's identity really strongly always
Yeah,
feels really good. Yeah.
yeah. And what you're talking about with the way that Karlach's backstory informed like kind of her emotional level and everything like that, that is because Karlach's dialogue is definitely one of them within the game that you can very easily point to and be like, I know which character that is without reading it.
Mm.
And the combination of that and badassery was just like it's such a good mix because I love D&D characters that subvert what people, because everybody has the idea of what the class is. Like the barbarian is just like, I'm the big dumb grrr one, and like you have the anger and the rage of Karlach in there, but contained within a character you wouldn't expect to be a barbarian. In fact, when
Mm.
I found out she was a barbarian, I was like, oh, I didn't actually expect that at first, and I can't wait to see how that develops through it. So like, was that a thought though while you were writing of like still trying to get across she is a barbarian?
I think I wasn't, yeah, I think not maybe in terms of the specific class so much as in terms of her story, like what she's had to do to survive, which is to be
Mm-hmm.
very martial, to really like utilize the power that she has to uh, fight in this blood war, this like horrible,
Yeah.
bloodthirsty war for such a long time, and you can't show any weakness. She's in the court of Zariel, the archdevil of Avernus, and weakness is just pounced on in that environment.
Yeah.
Like the closest thing that she had to a friend was someone that would have turned on her in an instant. So the kind of mask that she would have had to wear for such a long time, I think, and the anger that she would have had to suppress and only ever use for violence. I think all of these just kind of like formed in my mind, um, the nuances of that personality, I guess.
I love that. Like you said, that's one thing that I do really enjoy about all of the companion characters is that like while we see a class up there and everything, like they don't talk or act in the way that it's like, oh, I'm this class, I'm showing off the archetypes of this. Like Lae'zel, like she's a fighter, but she could have also been like a barbarian or something like that, because
Mm,
it was more about her character and less about like I'm fitting this role from a tabletop RPG, and I enjoyed
yeah.
that a lot.
Yeah, I think there's the classes are really helpful in that they can they're like a seed from
Mhm.
which the character can grow. Like if you know a character is a fighter or a barbarian, um, the story can kind of grow around that and change and grow a lot of nuance and a lot of interesting like petals, I guess. And it's a very the classes are very evocative. You know, they have
Yeah.
really cool lore and really cool I mean, just like details about them that are very conducive to telling stories, which is why people, part of the reason why people love D&D. It's just so evocative. It just tickles your brain.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that I like that, and I don't know if this was a thing during the process, but the thing that I liked playing it was that there wasn't alignment in it. And like I understand mechanically why alignment is in D&D and everything like that. But it is one of those things that that I know people who kind of hold on to that a little too much, of like, I'm building my character on this, I have to stick to this. Like,
Mm.
was alignment talked about in the discussions for these characters, or was that just kind of allowing you to be free with who they were?
Whew. Yeah. I guess I shouldn't speak too much about alignment specifically because I know it's something that we talked about at times, but you know, we don't have it as a mechanic in the
Yeah.
game or as something that affects gameplay. And I kind of don't remember how it wove through the development process too much. But I think
Hmm.
something that we do talk about is broadly like good, neutral, and evil type characters.
Okay.
And there's a lot of nuances in that. So
Yeah.
someone like Asterion seems evil aligned, but he's so much more complex than just being a cackling, you know, villain.
He does do a bit of cackling.
He does, in fairness to him. In fairness to him, he really does. But then, you know, I guess if you think about the party composition, Karlach fits well as a later addition because she's just so straightforwardly good,
Yeah.
and she has nuances as well, and she has her rages, and she has um, things that are not perfectly good aligned, I guess, but it makes sense in a context where you have certain personalities to add in different textures, and you can think of those as good, neutral, and evil.
Yeah. My buddy B. Dave Walters, we used to host a show on here talking about D&D lore and stuff, and I always loved his definition of like the alignments where like good is selflessness and evil is selfishness.
Mm,
And I that like, even though he had nothing to do with this game, like I saw that in this game where it's like, yeah, Karlach has been fighting in the hells and everything like that, and is covered in these infernal tattoos, but she's completely selfless and like will go do the hero thing. And
mm.
I mean, that alone though is also like, again, subverting that barbarian trope where people think that it's like, oh yeah, they're just chaotic. And for her to like be in this direction of good was very interesting to see. And it also, this is minor spoilers, chat, also her just having like fangirling out about the heroes of the Forgotten Realms was such a great touch with that, where you could just see like the idolization of these characters. That was fantastic.
Yeah, there's something about it. Like she grew up in Baldur's Gate 3, and she's always had this like adventurous streak and this, I think, kind of like innate like
I want to be an
love for
adventurer sort
life.
of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Like what's out there for me? Like what can I do? And so I just felt and feel that she would have heard those stories so strongly, and
Yeah.
she would have seen the statue of the beloved ranger all her life, and yeah, and then to see them in the flesh, like oh my goodness, preach,
uh
you know.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's good stuff.
Mm.
There was other stuff I was gonna say there, but I'm trying to keep the spoilers light on that, of
Mm.
other characters that are in the game.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
No, it's fine though. One of the other things though that I wanted to talk about the writing process of was the interaction between the characters and how that worked with the other writing teams. Like, when, because some of my favorite scenes are when you do something and three exclamation marks pop up, and
Hmm.
the characters have kind of a roundtable discussion about what just happened. Like, how did those scenes come to be? Like, were you working with the other writers at the same time, or were you passing notes back and forth?
That's a good question. I think typically we would write them independently and then read each other's work and notice where we were stepping on each other's toes, or a beat was portrayed slightly differently or something like that. But I think our kind of general approach is to get in your sauce first and foremost, and edit afterward, iterate after.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it, since getting this role, like, I playing video games has been different for me this year, where I'm like looking at the writing that's happening in it and going like, okay, how does this work? Because I'm in a different situation where I'm the one writer. And like,
Mm.
if
Oh
you
wow,
see,
yeah.
yeah, like flavor text, dialogue in game, like that's all me. And so like I'm so curious about how this other how it's done in other game studios. So forgive me if it's getting too technical in those questions. Forgive me, Chad. I'm nerding out a bit on this. But yeah, that was definitely one of those that popped up to me, because those banters between them were so, I mean, and also just the party banter in general
Mm.
walking around is just so good, where like you're getting these snippets of who they are and the way they interact with people, and just, Lae'zel hating people for seemingly no reason.
Yeah, those are very fun to write actually, and those. So we have something called like stub text. I don't know if it's the same in every studio, but it's like a placeholder text. And so, say if I'm writing one of those dialogues that goes over the head, and it's Karlach and Asterion, and Karlach is starting the text, I'm going to write a Karlach line. I'm going to write a stub line for Asterion, and then I'm going to pass it over to Stephen.
Okay.
Yeah, and then he's going to, we call it destubbing, destub that line,
Yeah.
and I'll have to write a response to that, or maybe I already wrote a response and it still fits. So that part is quite collaborative. And it's just so fun because whatever you write in your stub text is never as good as what they're actually going to do with it. Like you'll write, like sometimes I'll write a line, I'm like, haha, this is amazing. Like Steven's not going to have to change this line. I nailed it, you know? And then whatever he passes back to me is like so good. I'm just like, well, fine. This is a lot better than what I had planned. Well done, sir.
I mean, I'm getting that for the first time by working with y'all, by like writing this flavor text for the equipment, and then they send it over to you all, and I get notes back on it. And like, yeah, like for Shadow Hearts, that one stands out the most in my memory, because there was a line that got written, and they added the word hardly, and I'm like, how did I miss not having that word in here? She says that all the time.
Mm. I think John's got that real good ear for Shadowheart. Like it's she just flows through him, you know?
Oh, and I could tell in the notes, because like I did I said lady, or I said Shar in a few places and Lady Shar in a few others, and he changed some of them to be lady or without, and I was like, okay, there's a flow there that he's getting in there. That's fantastic. That was
Yeah.
really cool to be able to see.
There's something kind of like musical about it, you know, like you train your ear to a certain cadence.
Yeah.
It's the cadence of the character, and over time it just flows. And then if someone else writes a stub line for the character, it's just you can't even maybe explain why. It's not quite in the rhythm, and you just tweak it a little way, and then it fits, you know. And it's I just
Yeah.
feel it's very kind of intuitive and organic.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the stuff that I enjoy writing. But like, I've written like non-video game stuff and whatnot, but always dialogue is the stuff that I enjoy the most, because that is where you can get like the character voice and everything. Like you were saying, like being able to read a line and know that's this character. Those are some of my favorite things to see, and to get to work with a team that's all doing that. Like that sounds like a fun, like almost puzzle solving situation, where like I'm
Mm.
putting down the first clue and then you're doing this. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's very, very fun.
So I gotta ask, have you played the game since it's released?
I have played so much of this game.
I'm sure you have.
However, I haven't done a proper run, like a proper non-development start to
Yeah.
finish run of Baldur's Gate 3. And I really want to, but we're still, you know, like patch 5 just released, for
Yeah.
instance. Um and we're still just in active development. So after that, you just want to go home and do something else.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sure. I'm sure. Yeah, because I mean, even that was actually surprising when I saw that things were coming out. That was like it was the writing team was still working on stuff.
Mm.
As when a lot of other games like it's maybe like mechanical updates you expect to see and whatnot, but y'all have been putting out new stories into the game and whatnot. Like that's pretty impressive.
Oh, this game is just so large.
It's a lot of game. It is a
It's a
lot
lot
of
of
game.
game.
I
Yeah,
it,
it's
that still does not fail to amaze me because like my first run through of the game, I think I clocked in at about like 75 hours or something like that. And
speed run.
that's what I've been hearing is it's like, oh, you speedrun the game. I'm like, I felt like I took my time. And meanwhile, I have coworkers here at C&E that are just like, oh yeah, 99 hours in, I'm just leaving Act 1. I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I know. I think my partner's put in like, I think it's got to be 500 hours by now, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, he's just played through it many a time. I think he did a few, two or three early access from start to finish, and he's about to finish his second full run since release, and just
Dang.
no signs of slowing down.
That's fantastic. I
Yeah.
that is the other thing is that like I don't think there's been a game that I have restarted so quickly and been like I'm gonna play this again for several tens more hours like and still
Mm.
have gone back to like have a few weeks off and I'm like oh no I want to start a new run. I got a character idea. I want to do this.
Yeah. Like, we've been working on this game for a long time, and I've played the first like 10 hours of the game like innumerable times,
Yeah.
just so many times. And I still find things that I've never seen before. And I don't understand how. Like, there's this one, I was throwing a fit the other day because there's this one like a rock bridge early on, like when you hit the crash site, and there's a treasure chest on it. And I was like, how have I never seen this? This isn't possible. How have I never seen this place before? How dense is this thing? How can this be?
I
It's
I am
crazy.
I'm having a weird experience right now because that first playthrough, like this is obviously one of the reasons why it was so much shorter, is I didn't do the crash later on,
Oh yeah.
and this is getting slightly spoiler, but I'm not going to really say anything about it. Like I went the other route, didn't go back, and so people have been talking about these things like I don't know what you're talking about, don't tell me things, and so I'm getting to experience a new thing in this game I've already spent over so many hours playing and there's just so much to do in this game.
Yeah, the missable content is really crazy.
Yeah,
Like, yeah,
it,
it,
it
it boggles the mind.
it's like extra little treats for the next time.
Mm.
But I wanted to ask, do you have a preferred subclass for Karlach, like between the wild magic, the frenzy and whatnot?
Mm, like to play her myself?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, I don't know. They both fit in their special way. So lore wise, no. I don't know. No, I don't know. No, I don't think so. Like every time I try to pick a favorite anything in this game or preferred anything, I'm just like, well, but then you lose this thing and then you don't get to have the fun of that. So no, I don't know. It's all fun.
Yeah, no, I get what you like. I normally in these sorts of games, like I will find like especially for character classes and stuff, something I'm like, okay, I really like how this works, so I'm gonna like every time I play through it, I'm doing the same thing. I do that with like I still play through Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic sometimes, and and I
Mm,
still keep Karth and all of them like exactly the same as they were in 2003. But like this one, every time I've done a playthrough, I think I've done a different subclass each time for everyone. Like I don't have this one way that I have a group where I'm like, oh no, you know what? I think this time I want Astarion to be a thief. And you know what?
mm.
I'm gonna have Karlach do the wild magic one because I like spirit flumps.
Yeah, so it's just a grab bag every time.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think I have gone into one of these playthroughs with a plan of what the party dynamic's going to be. I kind of just do it as it's happening and see where it takes me. And hopefully
Yeah.
it's a good dynamic. Hopefully it works in combat and I don't get stomped, but
No min-maxing in this house.
I am staunchly against min-maxing.
Okay.
I like, especially at the table where I'm like, no, I'm worried more about like story and character development of these characters than making sure that I'm hitting on every attack. Like if I miss,
Mm,
I miss. Um
yeah.
yeah. Granted, in Baldur's Gate 3, there are some times when a miss happens. I'm like, okay, well, but like we really could have used that
Mhm.
hit.
Shadowheart with her sacred flame.
Oh, I wasn't gonna name names, but maybe exactly specifically that one.
Yeah.
So do you? I'm gonna ask a few of these questions that are kind of like picking your favorites, but like, do you have a favorite moment of Karlach in the story?
Mm. Ooh.
Because she's got a lot of good ones. I mean, I think even
Yeah.
asking a fan of this would be difficult, let alone the writer.
It's very hard to pick one because there's ones that I like for different reasons, but I think one that I kind of come back to um, that still feels as fresh to me as the first day we started working on it, and then the first day also that I heard the voice from Sam Bayer
Mm.
is well, spoiler alert,
Nope.
her scene after she kills Gortash. She has this real reckoning with
Yeah.
I did what I came here to do, and it hasn't actually fixed anything for me.
Oh,
And I'm like, my heart is beating faster even as I'm just talking about it. Like, I really loved the process of writing the scene, and then when I heard the well, not just heard the voice, but the voice and the mocap, and I saw the scene come together, it was just devastating,
yeah.
devastating. And like, yeah, I said my heart's beating from talking about it. Like I feel it, and I just like
Oh yeah.
think about it.
I,
Um,
I I'm not
yeah.
gonna lie. When she was like, it didn't fix that. Like
Mm,
that broke my heart and like got some tears going in me, because like that's devastating. That's everything that she wanted. That fantastic writing. Well done.
thank you. Yeah, that's one of those scenes that's very so much than the sum of its parts. Like I the writing of it meant a lot to me, and I really um, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word. I guess it is. It was very felt good to write. But
Yeah.
then when the voice came back, when the mocap came
Mm.
back, when the cinematic art was done, the music as well, I was just like, wow. Like there
Yeah.
was just so much humanity in it from every contributor. It was just yeah, one of these examples. I think that I was stricken by the how flat text can be until it gets touched by all these loving hands, and then I was really blown away by the result.
Yeah. Yeah. I cannot imagine what that is. I mean, like, just even any lines of dialogue, getting this person that's building a whole character around the sound, because like you have a sound in your head for how your writing's going and whatnot,
Mm,
but I can't imagine what that's like getting that in the hands of a trained voice actor who is like,
mm.
I'm going to be voicing this character for countless hours. Like what was that like, getting the first sound clip back of that? Like what was that experience like?
Yeah, good question. I'm trying to remember which dialogue was the first one we saw, but I think the general feeling around hearing back sound and motion capture is just the elevation of it, just like how much it makes it real and makes it tactile and uh, so much more than what you could have pictured. Like
Hmm.
you do
Yeah.
you do hear it in your head, and I act a lot of my scenes out myself, so I'll have my
Oh
way of
really?
acting them. Yeah, like when I'm writing them or when we would do like reviews, I would like perform it because I wanted to convey what I was
Heck yeah.
wanting for it. Yeah. um but it never compares to the actual actor taking it into their hands and infusing it with the soul and spirit. And Sam really like um there's just a lot of infusion of humanity, and yeah, soul is the right word.
Yeah. Yeah, which is really great wording for someone that uses soul coins.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I actually I didn't have this question here, but that does make me think about it. This is slightly spoilery, but like, how did was that decision around using soul coins and infernal engines with her? Was that just purely because like you wanted the direct connection to Descent, or was that just something that kind of came about naturally of like, oh, we have these elements, we can pull them together in this way?
Yeah. I I I think my memory of that is that actually I don't know.
Oh, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, I think this
Yeah,
was probably Bo in the narrative department with the soul coins, but I think it fits with the materials that you have for Avernus and how Avernus like is its relationship with the material realm. Um, yeah,
yeah.
it fits for her character. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It was I ran Descent into Avernus for my home group, and so
Mm.
like, that was, I think we ended that one in like 2020 2021. So like getting to like hear those things again, like even though there
Mm.
are things in this game that are obviously different from how that campaign ended, it was so weird to like hear people talking about things that I'm like, my players experienced this.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. It's funny you mentioned that because I was just rereading this dialogue today where Zevlor, the leader of the Tiefling encampment, is talking about the descent, and he gives this
yeah.
description of what it was like. And I was reading that today for a completely random reason, but it's funny that you're bringing it up now.
That's that sort of stuff. I mean, even Zevlor himself, like when he just, there's like a background conversation between him and another character that just drops that both of them are Hell Riders, and
Mm.
I nearly flipped a table. I'm like, you're what? Because like I read into all of those because one of my players, their character also wanted to have that background that they were a Hell Rider, and so it was this
Mm.
really cool, this weird experience of playing a video game and having this like, oh, there's a connection there to one of my players' characters. That's so
Yeah,
cool. That's so cool. That's so neat.
yeah, yeah. It's very cool when because like the D&D lore is so rich and so deep,
Yeah.
there's so many elements like that that someone could have picked up in their own campaign that you can find back in the game, or vice versa. You'll play something you like in BG3 and take it to your tabletop, and there's this real kind of symbiotic thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, even just down to like the things that aren't said but are just kind of there in the background, like in the there's an area, I'm not going to say the exact area, there's an area that has like the Emerald Enclave symbol, but like no, at
Mm,
least that people that I talked to didn't mention it at all. And so, someone has a home character that's in the Emerald Enclave, they're like, oh, it's my people.
yeah,
That's so
yeah. Like
neat.
the details that are around. Yeah.
Exactly. So earlier on in the episode, you talked about you can only hope for what players are going to react to this character with. What what did you think of the reaction that the community had to Karlach?
Like relief. Yeah, it's like I think I was talking to another writer. Oh, I wish I could remember who it was. Maybe Adrian Law. We were talking about how when you give the characters to the world or you set them free, it's kind of like taking your kid to kindergarten and hoping people will like you, they'll make friends and
Oh, oh,
they'll have
yeah.
fun and find their flow or whatever. And there's that fear of like, oh, I hope you have a good day, you know?
Yeah. I
So it's
love
nice.
I
Yeah.
love that. I hadn't thought of like, there's one character in Idle Champions that I've gotten to help make, and didn't do any of the mechanics or anything, just made the character, the dialogue, and that is 100% the way I was like watching. I'm like, don't you be mean to her. I was like that overprotective parent, just like, community, don't you be mean to her.
Yeah, you hope they'll have a nice day and make
Yeah.
friends, you know? Yeah. So I
Uh,
think seeing that she did have a nice day and she made friends was very nice. Like, oh, good. I'm so glad.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I besides like just your writing and the way that you wrote her, even just the way that the game itself responds to her. Like, still to this day, one of my favorite lines. Like, anytime I go pick up Karlach, I make sure Shadowheart is with me just for the dialogue she says there, because it's so, I love it so much.
Yeah. Yeah, that's John and his uh absolute Shadowheart cadence. Yeah, I love that line as well. And I don't think it was planned, like I think it kind of turned out that all of the party members had a fairly positive reaction to her. Like I think Asterion is pretty positive about her, and Gale, and etc. Is Gale? Gale might be the only one that's on the fence. Anyway, that wasn't like, okay, everyone has to be nice to Karlach and like her. It was just made sense for all the characters in their own way,
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is I'll give you this one, Chet. This one is spoilery. Like, especially with Will, like that combination of having, like, it's when you're at a home game, you're always kind of worried about the inter-party drama. Like, you're worried about, like, okay, well, like, we can't just split the group here because you guys are arguing about this. And to have that injected from the get-go, where it's like you're recruiting two people who are actively against each other,
Mm,
was a very interesting choice, and one that I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. And the way that scene played out with those two characters, it was believable as heck. Like, with what Karlach said to him, and him still trying to be like, I'm gonna hate you. Nope, you're just you're a nice person. Dang it. And that was really fun to be able to watch and see two characters that were going at each other then start to work together.
yeah, and that's very uh it made sense for both of them, like considering their backstory. And very hard to pull off because that scene, there's the permutations, like it can happen in so many different locations.
Yeah.
You could have recruited Will first, you could have recruited Karlach first, in the Grove, Avatar versus Companion, etc. So it was kind of like intimidating.
Yeah.
It's an
Well,
intimidating prospect, yeah.
how does that work? Like, are you just having to jump into that moment, or are you like looking at what's built up before that that could possibly have built up into it? Because yeah, you're right. There, I've now realized how many places I've seen that happen.
Mm,
I can't imagine how that is trying to prep that for writing.
it's so hard.
Yeah, I
It's
bet. Yeah.
yeah. I think we just try to catch them all, like
Hmm.
you start with the cases that you know of off the top of your head and you keep playing it until you find cases that you forgot about and you keep adding them. And it's very iterative and very like we rely on each other a lot to feedback and expose the places where a case is missing.
Yeah.
And you just end up with like, you know, like galaxy brain levels of permutations.
I have to imagine, because like I know that I'm to the point that I've written so many things for this game that I don't even remember the things that I have written in some
Mm.
places, where like I'll hop into the game and I'll see a flavor text on a feat and I'll laugh and go, I hope I wrote that one.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Uh, uh, I have so many embarrassing moments when it comes to that because same, I forget stuff that
yeah.
I've written all the time. And there was this one time I was reading someone else's dialogue and I saw a line that I thought was really funny in their dialogue and I screenshotted it and I sent it to them and I was like, this is a great line. And she was like, you wrote that one. I was like, I'm so sorry. I promise that was not on purpose. That's so cringe.
Okay, if it makes you feel better, that situation I gave literally happened, where I brought up the game, laughed out loud, and said, I hope I wrote that. And then I went into the back end of the game at night and was like, okay, good, I
Oh,
did write that
okay.
one.
It's the only way to know. Like you have to look at your commits or whatever, your change list and be like, okay, yeah, that one was me. Because
Yeah.
yeah, with the volume, you can never be sure.
Oh yeah, I bet. Like, there's just so much writing in this game, and you all did just an incredible job with it. Like, I am legitimately floored each time I play it, with just, especially when there's new dialogue that's coming up, and the way that these characters are handling situations, and they're always there's not one moment in this game where I'm like, that feels out of character for who I've played with. And
Mm.
that alone is wild because you can play this so many different ways, and for them to still be consistent in it is so impressive to watch. Like it's amazing.
Yeah. Well, thank you. And I also feel that way about my colleagues' work,
Yeah.
like there's so much text in the game that like I can go in and just every time see something I've never seen before. And I just can't believe it. I just it's just so amazing to work yeah, with those people. And like I was saying before, when we pass off dialogues back and forth and I think I've nailed a line for their character and they completely blow it out of the water, like that kind of stuff happens all the time. Or like a whole region even, like I didn't play spoiler for Act 3, the circus in Act 3 for a really long time.
Same.
And yeah, and then when I actually went in there and saw it, I was like, this is amazing. And it's like, I think, almost all of it, if not all of it, was written by Rachel Quirk. And I was just like, Rach, I didn't know this was like here and it was so good. Like, oh my God. So yeah, that kind of stuff is just great.
Please tell that person I will appreciate them forever for a drag queen necromancer. That's my favorite thing that has ever happened ever.
Yeah, Lucretius is amazing.
Oh, it's so good. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of the episode here. Chat, I told you I was gonna have a very spoilery question at the end. This is your warning. This is a question about the end of the game. We're gonna talk about that a little bit. So if you don't want to hear that, this is your time to hop out. Go get Karlach, and that's perfect. You can hop out and go get Karlach right now in Idle Champions while you're playing Baldur's Gate 3. It's the best combination. Okay, so this is it. Spoilers. So the end of the game for Karlach, I had to bring this up because you were talking about with Gortesh the combination of the dialogue, the acting, the mocap, and everything, and that when like Karlach drops on the dock and is catching on fire, like
Mhm.
I don't think there is an emotional level in this game that hit that hard for me. Like, especially my
Mhm.
wife. She did everything properly with Will and everything. And when she's catching on fire, my wife is crying. She was like, "No, no, we did everything. No." and so like for it to go through so much of her talking, and then Will show up, and it's like, okay, she's gonna live. It's gonna be there, but she's gonna live. Like, I
Yeah.
I think if my wife hadn't done everything correctly, like she would have been devastated for like probably a whole week after that.
Oh
Like that
no.
scene was incredibly well done for everyone involved. Um, but what I wanted this is just a fun little question, and I understand this is one of those where we talked earlier. There's a possibility you can't answer this one, but I'm curious. Have you thought at all about like what the Avernus adventures of Will, Karlach, and possibly Tav look like? What they were gonna go do? Or they just going down there and fighting as many demons as they can?
Well, have you played Patch 5?
I have not. Am I asking a question that has an answer? Oh.
I think your question has more detail in Patch 5. So Patch 5 is the epilogue. So it happens after the events that you and your wife played. And it's 6 months after the events of Baldur's Gate 3. Withers calls
Oh,
everyone back to have one last party at camp. And all your buddies are there, including Miss K. And you can talk to her about what she's been up to.
I didn't know that. I'd heard about patch 5. I hadn't had time to look into it yet. Well, I know what I'm doing this weekend. Looks like I'm finishing this game. I'm gonna go back to. I think I'm actually gonna load up a save from my first game and play through the ending again to get there. That must have been wild to get to do though. Like so far after all of this.
Yeah, yeah, and like I'm making this horrible face. I'm sorry. Like
No,
the
no.
the permutation, like I don't even have words for it. So it's like everything that happened in the game so far, you have to account for it in the specific combinations of what the party
Oh
composition could be,
yeah.
etc. It was so like I'm still rendered speechless by trying to put like human words onto onto the process of trying to make this. And I hope I'm not exaggerating too much, but it was just crazy. But it's there now, and we're all like really happy about it, and
That's
it's a lot of
awesome.
fun. Yeah, it's great to see what everyone wrote and everyone's work. So yeah,
That
if
makes
you're
me so happy, not just as a player, but like just like as a fellow writer, like getting to appreciate y'all getting to do this work and kind of put a capstone on these characters. Oh, that's so exciting! That is my weekend plan.
yay, have fun.
I definitely will. Sir, thank you so much for taking time today and talking with me. This was an absolute blast, enlightening as all heck for me. And I'm hoping, chat, that I didn't get too nerdy for you out there with this. But yeah,
It
thank
was
you.
a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So yeah, that is gonna do it for this week's episode of Idle Insight. So until next week, take care of yourself.
Bye.